Good afternoon and welcome to Small Business Matters, where we talk about all things small business. We talk about the entrepreneurs behind them, the ones that make them go, the ones that make them grow. Today we have a great guest, as we usually do. We have Mr. Steve Calvar. Steve, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
How's it going?
It's great.
So, Steve, tell me a little bit about yourself before we start talking about your business and those kinds of things.
Well, I'm primarily, we have an accounting practice where we help small business and individuals make sure that they know their numbers, make sure that they comply with their tax obligations federally, with the state, make sure that they know what they're looking at when they look at their numbers, and make sure that they plan accordingly.
Okay. So, you're an accountant by trade, apparently, but your title on this screen doesn't say that. It says small business problem solver. So before you tell me about that, I want to tell you that I'm a marketer, and from a marketing perspective, that's just brilliant, because there are, maybe a zillion accountants out there, but how many position themselves as small business problem solvers? And you're addressing pain points
Right.
just in that title. So how did you come up with that?
Well, I mean, most of my clients have come to me and say, look, I have all these problems and I need to resolve them, and I need your help, and I need your help. And one day I figured, I said, wait, this is really what I do people, pay us to solve their problems. They don't have the expertise in resolving these accounting issues and bookkeeping and tax. And that's really what we specify. It's just really helping these business owners know their numbers, like I said before, and create those goals to make them, to lead them to success.
Okay, so as a marketer, I have to know my numbers, I have to know my clients' numbers.
Right.
So we focus on metrics such as return on ad spend, on average value of each transaction. We focus on the lifetime value of clients,
Sure.
right? And some other metrics as well. Lifetime value, to give you a great example, sometimes you may even lose money on your first sale.
Right.
And I can't just leave out my example number one for this kind of transaction, which are dentists. They are the masters of the upsell. So they may have an ad in the paper that says $25 for a tooth cleaning, and they're not going to make money there. But while they're there, it's like, your teeth are a little yellow. You could use, whitening. They're a little crooked. You could use braces.
Right.
So the numbers I look at are those. From your perspective, what numbers should I know, and all small businesses know as small business owners?
Well, primarily the number one number that you need to look at is sales, because that's what's going to drive your cash, and that's what's going to drive your goals of what type of client that you want, what type of service you're trying to provide, and what additional services you need to provide. Because at the end of the day, we know that what dictates everything is sales. The most wealthy individuals are in sales.
Right.
That's really what it comes down
I like
to.
to say sales cures all ills.
It does. It very does. Cash is king, and if your cash flow is not right, then business is not going to function. Then you can't buy the support for your clients and give them the best support that they can afford, and one that you can provide them. I've always had a saying that says, the better technology you have, the better your client's going to be. That's really what it comes down to.
Explain that.
Well, I mean, if you look at the end of the day, if you go to a dentist, let's use your example, and you go into their office and you see that they have the latest and greatest technology, then you're going to feel comfortable with them, and they're going to give you the service, they're going to give you the treatment that you deserve or that you need in a fraction of the time. So what's going to happen is you're going to refer other people to them, because you're going to know and identify that they're at the latest, with technology.
I, like you, I imagine anyway, that you also deal with some old school
Absolutely.
business owners.
Absolutely.
What's their feeling on technology?
Well, the clients that we do have, which are old school, as we say, they do have, it's usually a family-run business, so they have either their daughter, a son that's in the background that's running the operation as well. The old school person is more the figurehead and just kind of looking at the day-to-day operations and just putting in their 2 cents. So they are averse to technology, but luckily there's always somebody behind that's really kind of picking up the ball on their end.
What have been in your field some big technological developments in the last 10 years that make your job easier and also make your services better for your clients?
What's helped us tremendously is the implementation of portals. So now we communicate with our clients via portals with secure systems whereby they can exchange information with us. And that way it makes it easier for us. The client doesn't have to spend time coming to our office, dropping off paperwork. Paperwork gets lost. Everything is in one spot, and we're able to access it wherever we are, 24/7. And it just makes it that just much easier for us.
So at this time of year, I bet those portals are pretty full.
Oh, pretty full. They're pretty full, yes. And the advantage of having those portals is we exchange information with the client as far as delivering, their tax returns, financial statements, any sort of projections, budgets, and it's all in one portal, so they can find it anywhere. So the exchange of emails, it becomes very redundant in the sense that we have to send the information 2, 3, 4 times, and we cut down on that. We cut down on basically the waste of time.
Okay. This is all about small business. You've seen a ton of them, definitely way more than I have. What are some mistakes, or if you want to take it from the other angle, what are some things that a starting business needs to keep their eye on just to ensure their probability of success? Because we all know that there's a huge percentage of small businesses that fail.
Sure.
So what do you suggest they do to make sure they survive and thrive?
Well, number one is have a very good accountant. That's to begin with. Secondly, it's more keeping your eye on your cash, keeping your eye on the cash flow, how you spending it. Sales, obviously, as we said before.
What's an easy way to keep track of those expenditures for a small business person that is wearing 1,000 hats?
So one of the things that we highly recommend is to get an online service, such as an example, QuickBooks. We don't endorse them, but QuickBooks is online, and it helps us track that cash. Obviously, just by the implementation of the numbers, going through them, and making sure that the client knows, hey, this is what you spent your money on. Let's hold back on certain items. Maybe they feel as though they have certain personal expenditures they deem necessary. Unfortunately, sometimes they don't. We could give them the advice, but if they take the advice, it's great. But one of the things that I've really seen in small businesses is, especially professional service providers, is they become a technician within their business. Initially they do have to do that, but I always recommend they become an operator. And what do I mean by that?
What do you mean?
Working on your business instead of in your business. So what happens is most professionals, doctors, attorneys, accountants, engineers, architects, they work, they cut their teeth, somewhere at another firm, and they go on their own. They hang their shingle. I'm open for business, and they just start working and working and working and working. And then the years start passing by, and all they've done is create a job for themselves. So what I do is I come in and I show them the difference between being a technician and being an operator. And being an operator is putting someone in their spot to do the technical work while they're working on that business and growing the business, and not being in the forest and being kind of in the minutia of everyday work, because then they don't have the time to grow that business and see other opportunities where they can provide other services to that same kind of service, to that same clientele, and have that added value.
I can certainly relate to that. Guilty as charged. It's very tough to break away, and I belong to this mastermind group, and one of the pieces of advice that they give is to stay away from what they call snowflake projects. In other words, kind of stay in your lane, stay within your guardrails.
Right.
They also emphasize productizing your offering, so
Yes.
that keeps you kind of in check as far as the services you provide. So what are some other things that you've seen small businesses kind of, that's a big one, is working on your business. Before we move on, how have you observed that people can do that, or what's the point at which they can or should do that? Because obviously there's a reality about, can I hire somebody to do this? Can I get a freelancer to do this?
Right.
You know, where have you seen people make that jump? And you made the jump, I'm sure, at some point.
Yes.
So where is it appropriate? When is it appropriate to make that jump?
My opinion has always been when you start seeing that you can't deliver as promised to the clientele, that's when it's time to hire somebody. Because if you have to figure out what is my deadline with these clients, what is an appropriate time to deliver, and if you can't deliver within that time, maybe it's time for you to hire. And you don't have to hire full time right away. You have many options. You could hire a subcontractor, freelance, obviously freelancer, someone part-time, and start that way and work yourself up.
That's really great advice, to do it when you're starting kind of to mess up,
Right.
for lack of a
Exactly.
better way of saying it. What do you see as far as, you mentioned numbers, because we just talked about sales so far, but what other numbers should a small business be very aware of? Because that's the top line. Then what are you going to take home? What are you going to pay yourself? How are you going to grow the business? What are some other numbers that they should be looking at?
Well, numbers are primarily payroll.
Okay.
That's a big one because you end up with the payroll taxes and salary. Well, that's huge. But the next one is rent. And what I've seen recently is a lot of people are getting away from brick and mortar and working from home. I mean, we saw that with COVID, and a lot of people got very comfortable with that. But the business owner actually saw how much they can save in paying $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month in rent. They can save that and use that and allocate that to other things in order to run the business, streamline it, and run it better.
Are there tax implications to that, other than obviously not being able to deduct rent? What can you do if you work from home from a tax perspective?
You have the home office deduction. You can take that. There are other things that you can do with that money aside from working from home, but you can actually create pensions, create retirement funds. There are different strategies that can be implemented, but it all depends upon the industry, depends on the business and their cash flow. This always comes down to cash flow and seeing exactly what can we do and how can we streamline that cash flow. That's why projections are so important, because you can dictate, in budgets, you can dictate what your cash flow is going to be throughout the year. We go back to sales. We project sales, and we create goals in order for those sales to constantly be increasing throughout the year. Unfortunately, sometimes there's a book called The Slight Edge, and in the book, he emphasizes how a lot of business owners, what they do is they get to a certain point, and they stop. So they're swimming, and then they sink. They swim, they get back up, and it's that yo-yo effect, that up and down, that creates that problem in the business. And what we try to do is show the client, show the small business owner how to create that streamlining, that increasing streamline of sales.
What are some of the things you recommend? And I realize every business is different, but what are maybe some success stories that you've seen of somebody that can control those ebbs and peaks?
Right. So we had a client, coming off the top of my head, we had a client that they were having issues. It was an attorney. He was having issues. We referred him to a advertising and marketing specialist. And aside from that, we told him, what is your ideal client? And all he did was focus on that one ideal client. So the saying goes, whatever you focus on is what's going to grow. And with time, working with the marketing specialist and working with that ideal client and looking for that client, they started growing sales.
That is critical, what you just said, because if you're not consumer driven, if you don't know your ideal consumer inside and out, we do an exercise that we actually develop a customer avatar. And we not only get into the business aspects, the demographics of that potential consumer, but also we delve into the personal side. We want to know what somebody's hopes and dreams are, things like
Right.
that, so that you can not only hit business pain points in your marketing messaging, but also personal pain points, so that you have an emotional communication with them.
Right.
An emotional impact is always greater than just pretty much a business impact type
Correct.
of thing.
Great. Well, we also lead the client to making a community impact, what community they're in order to make that impact. One of the things that we've noticed and we've learned is the more involvement they have in their community, for some reason, their business grows. And it's just not to say that they're just interested in the community because they want to grow their business, but it's just what they want to do intrinsically and work with the community to make themselves feel better and give of themselves, and the business grows.
How do you develop business? How do you get business for your company?
Our business is mainly referral based. That's primarily, and that's why it's so important when we talked about hiring that person, keeping that reputation that we do fulfill, whatever promises we make. Aside from referrals, we also have we work with other accountants that can handle certain items such as tax planning. We also offer CFO services, virtual CFO services, and most accountants don't provide that. And one of the other things is tax resolution work. And a lot of accountants that we collaborate with give us that sort of referral. We don't want their client; we just want the business, and that's something that we've built over time, over the years. And we do have a lot of other accountants that we work closely with in order to service their clients, in order for the client to receive that service.
From a marketing perspective, I got to ask this question. So when you do those kinds of jobs, when you're, let's just say, tax resolution, you're referred by another accountant, does your organization's name come out, or is it what we call white label, where it's all through them? You're just some guy in the back room.
It depends. It all depends
Okay.
on what the accountant wants to do. Sometimes he's just like, I really don't want to deal with it. I don't want my name on the, on the case. Sometimes we white label it and we just go through them. They subcontract us to do the work, and we're okay with that. There's no issue with that. It all depends on the accountant.
Okay. You do bookkeeping work, I guess, for companies. I just heard you mention tax resolution. How have you structured these? I mean, you're an entrepreneur in your own right, because you have several businesses, from what I can tell. What's your journey been like?
The journey has been interesting, as you know, and I tell all my clients and all small business owners, business is not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. And really, I always like to say that I'm my client psychologist, because they call me and they're always asking, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay the bills? This is happening, sales are not up, and COVID, and all these things. And I always tell them, business is not easy. Even for myself, with the years of experience that I have, every day is a grind. And I tell that to everybody. It's not for everybody. Entrepreneurship, that is not for everybody. It's not for the faint of heart. There are, there are very highs and there are very lows. And it's just knowing how to overcome these. And yes, a high is, you have to overcome that, because you know that the low is coming somewhere down the line. But it's just knowing how to handle it and how to function with those lows.
When did you decide to make the move? Because I know you worked for a big firm.
Yes.
And I don't know how old you were. I don't know how long ago it was. But at some point you said, I'm going to do this on my own.
Long story short, we were taken over by a large regional firm out of Virginia. And I said, I think this is the time for me to go on my own. I went back to the guys, the firm that I worked at when I was in college, very small firm. They were gracious enough to give me a desk, and I just started building my practice out of that desk, and here we are, 15 years later.
You mentioned that you get 100% referrals, basically, or
But
close to it.
close to it, yeah.
Close to it. Does that provide a steady flow? Because as a marketer, I'm looking at not only referrals, but I'm looking at doing stuff online,
Sure.
through digital marketing
Sure.
and things like that. I know you're aggressive in digital marketing
Yes.
because I've seen your stuff. What does that do for you? And how do you get referrals? Do you ask for referrals? Do you network? Are you part of networking groups? How do you get your referrals?
So I'm not part of a networking group.
We're going to change that, by the way.
Yeah. And the referral stream is not constant. It's not, there is, we all know that the funnels, but I don't have a steady stream of referrals in the sense of everyone's knocking on my door every single hour, every minute. It doesn't, it really doesn't work that way for us. But luckily there's always something always comes up, and as we say, God always provides.
Right.
So luckily, we are graced and with that blessing of always having a referral source and knocking on that door and saying, hey, remember me, or hey, don't forget me, send something my way if you get something interesting, or I really tell my referral sources what I want, so they can be on the lookout for that.
Do you have any strategic partners? And what I mean by that are referral sources that are not in your industry, but may have clients that could be mutual clients. For example,
Absolutely.
For me, it's IT companies. People want websites developed.
Right.
What are some of your referral partners?
Well, my referral partners are financial planners, corporate attorneys, estate planning, or estate attorneys, real estate attorneys. Mostly attorneys are really our referral sources. And over the years, I've developed that. Guys that I grew up with that have become attorneys, and always keep in touch with them, and making sure that they, and vice versa, we send them also referrals. So there's always that acknowledgement that they need referrals too.
It's tax season. I don't think we need to hide the fact. What now, switching to the personal side a little bit, what are some things that a small business owner on their personal side can do to not pay so much to Uncle Sam?
Well, that's an interesting question, because on the personal side, they've limited so much. It's very difficult, but luckily, going back to their corporate side, there's so much to do. There's so much that's available to plan, and I say plan. You have to be proactive, not reactive. So once the bill comes in, that's it. You're too late. So it's being more proactive and saying, hey, listen, I need a plan for the next year, and seeing exactly what we need to do. That's why the projections are important. The budgets are important. You need to know what again, cash flow, because without cash, you can't do these tax saving moves. And we don't want the client to feel as though they're being alienated and we're not listening to them because they have a large tax bill. It's always, hey, listen, we need to be proactive, and let's meet either every month, every quarter, but we have to do something.
I know you're a big reader.
Yeah.
I know that you like to read books about business, about self-improvement. Who are some of the authors, and what have they told you or taught you that sticks out?
Well, Michael Gerber, who wrote E-Myth, and his premise is work on your business, not in your business. That's just huge for me. Self-development, it's more Ed Milet, Andy Frisella. Those guys have really, because they really talk the truth, and they don't sugarcoat anything. And I always recommend my clients to listen to their podcasts and look at their videos on YouTube, especially their books. But those guys started from nothing, and they built their own brands They're both, Ed Milet is a financial advisor, and Andy Frisella owns a supplement company called First Form.
Okay. And what have you learned from them? What have they?
That business is hard. This is very hard.
Okay.
And it's normal. It's normal to feel that way. It's normal to feel that sometimes it's just not working out. Sometimes, that if you feel like you're failing, it's okay. Every entrepreneur feels that way. It's just they don't share that. Who wants to share that?
Right.
But all the small business owners out there need to realize that business is hard, and it's okay to feel that way. Tomorrow's a new day, and you get up and you keep grinding and keep grinding and keep grinding, and just not to give up. That's really what it comes down to.
How do you get relief from the grind? Is there something that you do to try to? Do you have a moment to get away from the grind?
You have to make the moment.
Okay.
That's something that I tell all my clients, because I do get that question all the time. I'm always working 60 hours a week. I'm working 70 hours a week. Going back to being the technician, you're going to be working those hours. And that's why switching to the operator, you're going to work probably the same hours, but you're going to be able to manage those hours. Manage in the sense of you need to have family time. You need to spend time with your family. Usually the downtime is what's going to give you the ideas.
Okay.
It's going to open your mind up to different things that can happen in your business that you need to do. That if you're always grinding, you're always being the technician, you're not going to get those ideas, because your mind is so focused on getting the work done that your mind can't work on two things at the same time. You're only going to work on one thing. But when your mind is relaxed, your mind comes up with ideas and will give you the solutions to the problems that you have.
That's really great advice. And I know that for an entrepreneur that is go, go, go all the time, that's really difficult to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about how your family supports you in this venture, or doesn't, I don't know. Tell me a little bit about that, because I'm sure you're a family guy apparently, and what's their role in your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, I can tell you that my wife, Madeline, is 100% supportive of me. I mean, she was the one that pushed me to go on my own. I remember that one day that she said to me, either you do it or just don't talk about it anymore.
Okay.
I don't want to hear about it. But she's 100%. She's my biggest supporter. My mom is my biggest supporter. They all support me. I mean, there's no numbers, real percentages of the support they give me. But everybody in my family has always been very supportive of what I've done, and it's been very important to me.
Okay.
And unfortunately, there are business owners that their families don't support their, what's burning in their heart to do. But sometimes you just have to, really grind it out and show them, hey, listen, this is what I really want to do. And just by action, I've seen a lot of people change their minds and support them, because they say, hey, they really want to do this. And this is not like a fly-by-night type of deal, and I really need to back them up.
How long have you been in business now for yourself?
We're going on 22 years.
So how does that feel? How does that feel that,
Well,
I made it past year one,
yes.
I made it past year
Yes,
two,
absolutely.
here I am at year 22.
Yeah, well, those 22 years have been very, very rocky. I can tell you that. But there's something I learned recently. Dan Kennedy wrote a book called The Gap in the Gain. And what the gap in the gain is that sometimes we look at where we want to go as the ideal, and we're always so focused on where we want to be that we let ourselves down, and we're not reaching it, and then we start getting down on ourselves and not looking at the gain. So the gain is, look where I came from. When I started basically, I inherited my late father's client, which paid me, no joke, $350 a month. Okay, back then. And I worked myself up to now. And I look back just to see, like I say, don't look back, just look forward. But I look back to see how far I've come. And I guess
that's the only reason to look back, right?
That's the only reason to look back. And I tell, every time I get a client, I get somebody that gets down, even doesn't even have to be a client, somebody that I know that gets down on themselves, I just tell them, look how far you've come. Look how far you've come. And just keep looking at that and just make little steps every single day. It's just making the little incremental steps every day. And that's what's important.
Great. So in summary, believe it or not, we're out of time. But in summary, I think we got some really good nuggets today. First of all, work on your business,
Yes,
not in your business. Of course, know your numbers.
absolutely.
Cash is king, or
Cash is king.
cash flow is king,
Cash flow is king.
we'll say. And another one that was great for me to hear was when you're not meeting expectations, your clients' expectations, it's time to start looking to hire somebody because you're doing way too much in your business.
You're working way too much, and you can't deliver, and you're gonna make mistakes.
All right. Excellent. Steve, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Really
It was
appreciate
great.
it. That's it for today, and we'll see you next week on Small Business Matters.